Alright everyone, and welcome back to the Highland Collector YouTube channel. So, the second half of 2019 was a really exciting time to be a Star Wars fan, as we were just overwhelmed with so much content, such as the first season of The Mandalorian, Jedi Fallen Order, a great update to Battlefront 2, but also this piece of shit. And with so much going on, Disney and Lucasfilm had to make a massive push with their merchandise, leading to Triple Force Friday, which was one of the biggest product reveals we've seen for Star Wars ever. And of course Hasbro got involved, as they ended up revealing some amazing figures for both the Vintage Collection and also Black Series. However, at the same time we also saw what would become one of the most controversial lines in the Black Series also revealed, that being the highly controversial Carbonized figures, which over the years have gained a reputation similar to Marmite, as people seem to either love them or hate them. But anyway, the first four figures in this line we saw shown off during Triple Force Friday was the Sith Trooper, the First Order Jet Trooper, both based off the Rise of Skywalker, the Mandalorian in his original armour, and finally the Second Sister Inquisitor from Jedi Fallen Order. And the basic concept of these figures is shiny. Basically they're just quick and effortless repaints. So the same figure but with a fancy metallic paint job, hence the name because they are metal, like carbonite. But despite that, this first lot must have done relatively well, because not only was the line carried over to the Vintage Collection, but 3 more Black Series figures were released the following year in 2020, celebrating the Empire Strikes Back's 40th anniversary, those being the Stormtrooper, Boba Fett, and this funky looking blue Darth Vader, which was exclusive to Amazon. And these original 7 carbonized figures are what I consider the golden age of the line, as that was definitely where it peaked, as I actually really enjoyed the majority of these figures. And that's not just because I've collected Funko Pops for the majority of my life and have become accustomed to metallic repaints, but more so because in most cases I think the shiny paint actually complements the figure well, making them stand out and really pop on a shelf, especially when displayed in the box. Although there are some I don't particularly care for, like the Jet Trooper or the Second Sister, the rest in my opinion look amazing. For example, Boba looks great. I appreciate the Vader as it's something unique and different. And that Sith Trooper is probably one of my favourite Black Series figures of all time. The shiny red colour on the carbonized one against the black looks incredible. I actually think it's superior to the regular version. The point that in my headcanon, this is the true colours of the Sith Trooper. However, not everyone was on board with this new line, as it does ultimately have some massive flaws. The biggest issue people seem to have with this line, apart from the fact they're just straight up cheap and lazy repaints, is the fact that these figures are not canon and accurate representations of the characters we see in Star Wars, which is a valid criticism, because Darth Vader doesn't look like this, Stormtroopers don't look like that. And if you are wanting authentic looking figures in your collection, I completely understand how this line isn't your cup of tea, because even I'll admit they can look rather out of place and jarring, as this Stormtrooper would just look weird next to all the standard ones, especially if you do display your figures out of the box, which does seem to be the majority of Black Series fans, which again actually makes this line pretty redundant to a lot of Black Series collectors, which is why it does receive quite a lot of hate. But that's just how it goes, cheap repaints will always exist in this hobby, and as a small gimmicky line I have to admit we could have gotten much worse. Because even if you're not a massive fan of these exclusive figures, you have to admit there are some pretty cool looking ones. And they look even better when packaged in the old style phase 3 black and red boxes, because one of the biggest draws of these first 2 waves in my opinion was the packaging, as not only were the boxes shiny and bold, but each box shared the colour palette of the character inside, therefore complementing the figure really well and making it pop and stand out in a collection. And it really proves the idea that the packaging is a part of the product. And I for one truly believe that these first carbonized figures were intended to be displayed in the box, because they just looked too good, as it created a really pleasing aesthetic that any inbox collector would enjoy. And as an inbox collector and seemingly secret magpie, the whole unrealistic and waste of space problems didn't seem to bother me, because as long as these figures continued to look good and were packaged nicely, I'd have nothing to complain about. However, Hasbro did seem to take a little break in the production of this line, leading many to speculate that it could be dead, as after all, like I said, apart from the odd collector like myself, this line wasn't regarded too highly. Yet despite this, the line did return 2 years later in 2022, with 3 new shiny figures based on the Mandalorian, those being Paz Vizsla, the Shore Trooper and also the Scout Trooper. And whilst the quality of the actual figures varied, with some like Paz Vizsla looking really cool, others like the Scout Trooper looking shit. Literally, I mean, what's the point of making a figure metallic and glossy if you're just not going to remove all the dirt paint apps, therefore making it look like it's literally been smeared in shit. But I digress. The biggest downgrade and complete and utter disappointment of these new figures had to be the new boxes, as during the line's short hiatus, the Black Series had undergone a complete rebrand and introduced the new Phase 4 Galaxy boxes, which overall were a positive, as the new style packaging looked great, just not for carbonized figures, as the perfect recoloured Phase 3 boxes were gone, taking all the life, boldness and character these figures had with them, as these new style boxes looked awful. and this was mainly due to the fact that the packaging was this dull grey colour, and I get what they were going for as the colour reflects the metallic style of Carbonite from Star Wars, but it just didn't compare with what came before, as now when displayed in the box these figures didn't look nearly as cool, leading to inbox collectors like myself giving this third wave a miss, which resulted in many of these exclusive figures like the Shore Trooper literally plaguing entire shelves at Target. Because now not only did out-of-box collectors not want them, but us in-box collectors also put our foot down, as without the classic colourful packaging, these figures felt incomplete. So again, shortly after this horrendous reintroduction to the Black Series, the Carbonized line went silent, as there were a lot of rumours that this line had seemingly been abandoned by Hasbro, with a hologram line ready to take its place. However, we were wrong because surprisingly this packaging didn't kill the line, as this year in 2023, a year after the release of these failures, the Carbonized line made another sudden reappearance, with two different exclusive 2-packs. The first being this Amazon exclusive repack of Ned B and the Purge Trooper from the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Now the figures themselves are fine I guess, Purge Trooper's pretty cool, but Ned B makes no sense being shiny because he is essentially a hunk of scrap, who actually would have benefited from more rust and weathering. In some kind of hyper-realism line, that would be a great idea, but again I digress. As lackluster as these figures are, the real killer was again the packaging, because not only was it in this ugly carbonized galaxy box, but it was also plastic free, and you know my thoughts on that. It's dreadful. So yeah, now all the inbox collectors were completely turned away, and I'd be surprised if Hasbro sold more than 10 units of this one, especially at that insane price point as well. But the other release I think actually saved this line in a way. It was a set of two, those being the Carbonized Royal Guard and the TIE Fighter Pilot, who were both released for Return of the Jedi's 40th anniversary, and I have to admit I really like this set. Although again the price is ludicrous, Hasbro actually incorporated good packaging, as these figures were packed on a shiny card back much like the Vince Collection Carbonized figures. And yes, again I would have preferred the Phase 3 boxes to make a return, but I think this is a great substitute, which I hope will return in future Carbonized releases, because much like the original boxes, the bright bold themed colours are back, and therefore so are the inbox collectors like myself, as it feels like these two figures here have taken the line back to its roots, because not only is the packaging great, but the figures themselves are actually really cool as well, especially that Royal Guard, who has all the same great qualities as the Sith Trooper, with that amazing red colour. It just looks incredible, especially again when boxed in something that actually looks good and nice on display, as like I said before, the packaging is a part of the product. But although we may have gotten the good packaging back, this line still seems to be hanging on for dear life, because at the time of recording it's still not dead, with another 2-pack set to release later this year, yet it's not looking good as Hasbro themselves is going to kill this line for good with their stupid decisions on what characters to give shiny paint jobs to, as this next Carbonized release is set to be a HK Assassin droid, which is pretty whatever, unless it's that new red one, alongside a Carbonized Ahsoka Tano. Yes, you heard me correct, Ahsoka is going to be a carbonized figure. Now I get Hasbro may just be wanting to get rid of old stock by carbonizing all the figures they have lying about, but in my honest opinion, whoever decided to greenlight a carbonized Ahsoka needs to be fired immediately. This line didn't have too many fans to begin with. You just got us back by updating the packaging and making it not look like shit, and now you're going to release Ahsoka Tano as a carbonized figure. This is so fucking dumb and annoying, because when done right, I really enjoy these figures, and there's so many characters who would make perfect sense to get the carbonized treatment, and would make for figures that even collectors who hate this gimmick may even pick up. For example, they could do another carded 2-pack, but this time with a shiny C-3PO and R2-D2. That would not only be really cool, but would also sell out. Because Boba Fett looked great, I think Jango would also make a great addition to the carbonized line. In addition to this, Captain Phasma and the Beskar Mandalorian would also make perfect sense, as their slick armour would translate really well. And the Armourer too was one we saw in the Vintage Collection, and she looked cool. But most importantly, why the fuck haven't we gotten a carbonized Han Solo in Carbonite? You would have thought that would be the first one they did. So in conclusion, is the carbonized line that bad? No, but it can be. Like I said before, I will defend the first two waves, as most of the figures look cool, and the packaging definitely carried. However, when Hasbro decided to release these figures in ugly packaging and give the paint jobs to characters who don't need them, then I side with the majority and think this line can be a real piece of shit. With that being said, I do still prefer it over the holiday figures and the disaster that is the credit collection, but what really annoys me about the carbonized line is that it has potential. If Hasbro released the right figures that make sense, in packaging that's actually pleasing to the eye, so stops with all this overpriced 2-pack bullshit, this line could turn into something great. It may not be for everyone, but these novelty figures can make for fun exclusives. But hopefully Hasbro can make these improvements and fix this line, if it does continue. Because with the exception of the carded Return of the Jedi figures, this line has been rapidly evolving in the wrong direction. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of the carbonized characters. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.